Hi dear friends, welcome to Sahithya Academy channel. ಇಲ್ಲಿವರೆಗೂ ಕೇಳ್ತಾ ಇದ್ರಿ ಎಲ್ರು ಇಂಪಾರ್ಟೆಂಟ್ ರೈಟರ್ಸ್ ಮತ್ತೆ ಫೇಮಸ್ ರೈಟಿಂಗ್ಸ್ ಅನ್ನ ತಗೊಂಡು ಇನ್ ಡೀಟೇಲ್ ಆಗಿ ಡಿಸ್ಕಸ್ ಮಾಡಿ ಅಂತ. ಸೊ ಐ ಹ್ಯಾವ್ ಟೇಕನ್ ಅಪ್ ದಟ್ ವರ್ಕ್ ನಾವ್. ಸಿಗ್ನಿಫಿಕೆಂಟ್ ರೈಟರ್ಸ್ ಮತ್ತೆ ಅವ್ರದ್ದು ಇಂಪಾರ್ಟೆಂಟ್ ವರ್ಕ್ಸ್ ಅನ್ನ ನಾನಿಲ್ಲಿ ಇನ್ ಡೀಟೇಲ್ ಆಗಿ ಡಿಸ್ಕಸ್ ಮಾಡ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದೀನಿ. ಯು ಕ್ಯಾನ್ ಸಿ ನಾವೆಲ್ಸ್, ಡ್ರಾಮಾಸ್ ಅಂಡ್ ಪೋಯಟ್ರಿ, ಎವ್ರಿಥಿಂಗ್ ಹಿಯರ್. Today I am going to discuss about Thomas Hardy's Return of the Native. Yes, my dear friends, so whoever not yet subscribed to the channel, please do subscribe. ಹಾಗೆ ನನ್ನ ಕ್ಲಾಸಸ್ ನಿಮಗೆ ಇಷ್ಟ ಆಯ್ತಪ್ಪ ಅಂದರೆ ಒಂದು ಲೈಕ್ ಅನ್ನು ಕೊಟ್ಟು and don't forget to share the videos with your friends and family. ಅದೇ ರೀತಿಯಾಗಿ ಟೆಲಿಗ್ರಾಮ್ ಗ್ರೂಪಿಗೆ ಇನ್ನ ಸಬ್ಸ್ಕ್ರೈಬ್ ಮಾಡ್ಕೊಂಡಿಲ್ಲ ಅಂತ ಅಂದರೆ ಬೇಗ ಬೇಗ ಸಬ್ಸ್ಕ್ರೈಬ್ ಮಾಡ್ಕೊಳ್ಳಿ. ದೇರ್ ಐ ಆಮ್ ಗೋಯಿಂಗ್ ಟು ಸೆಂಡ್ ಯು ದ ನೋಟಿಫಿಕೇಶನ್ಸ್ ಆ್ಯಂಡ್ ಪಿ ಡಿ ಎಫ್ಸ್ ಆಲ್ಸೋ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳ್ತಾ ಇವತ್ತಿನ ಕ್ಲಾಸನ್ನು ಶುರು ಮಾಡ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದೀನಿ. ಎಸ್, ಲೆಟ್ಸ್ ಬಿಗಿನ್ ದ ಕ್ಲಾಸ್. Yes, today I am going to discuss Return of the Native. The novel has written or published in 1878. The writer is Thomas Hardy. You know, the famous writer, Victorian period famous novelist and also a poet, Thomas Hardy. The Return of the Native, published in 1878, written by Thomas Hardy. Thomas Hardy was born in 1840 and died in 1928. Here I am not discussing about the writer in detail because I am going to give you the overview of the writer or in detail information in the regular literature class. ಹಾಗಾಗಿ ನಾನು ಇಲ್ಲಿ ಅದನ್ನ in detail ಆಗಿ ಡಿಸ್ಕಸ್ ಮಾಡ್ತಾ ಇಲ್ಲ. Still a little bit information ನ ಕೊಡೋಕೆ ಟ್ರೈ ಮಾಡ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದೀನಿ. So he was the English novelist and poet of the Victorian era, known for his deeply philosophical and often tragic portrayals of rural life. You can see all the characters in each and every novels. Tess in the Tess of the D'Urbervilles irbodu and other characters too. Jude the Obscure, Jude, and far from the madding crowd, Eustacia Y from the Return of the Native. So all the characters are having tragic ends. So all the novels are revolving around their fate, destiny. So and philosophically constructed novels all these are. ಸೊ ಹಾಗಾಗಿ ಥಾಮಸ್ ಹಾರ್ಡಿ ಈ ರೀತಿಯಾದಂಥ ಫೀಚರ್ಸ್ಗೆ ತುಂಬ ಫೇಮಸ್. He set much of his fiction in the semi-fictional region of Wessex. So he has given the map of the Wessex also, so that the readers can imagine the Wessex as real. These novels frequently explore themes such as fate. I already told you, fate. It talks about fate, nature in detail. Wessex ಬಗ್ಗೆ ಆಗಿರ್ಬೋದು, ಅಲ್ಲಿನ ನೇಚರ್ ಆಗಿರ್ಬೋದು, love, class conflict, and the constraints of this society with a strong undercurrent of existential despair. His major novels are Tess of the D'Urbervilles, Jude the Obscure, Far from the Madding Crowd, The Return of the Native. Please do read about all these novels. The novel centers around the bleak and brooding Egdon Heath. ಲೈಕ್ ದೆವ್ವದ ಮನೆಗೆ ನೀವು ಎಂಟರ್ ಆಗಿದ ತಕ್ಷಣ ಎಲ್ಲೋ ಏನೋ ಮಿಸ್ ಆಗ್ತಾ ಇದೆ, ಎಲ್ಲೋ ದೆವ್ವ ಇರೋ ಥರ ಫೀಲ್ ಆಗ್ತಾ ಇದೆ, ಭಯ ಆಗತ್ತೆ, ಕಳವಳ ಆಗತ್ತೆ. ಸೊ ದಟ್ ಈಸ್ ವಾಟ್ ಬ್ರೋಡಿಂಗ್ ನೇಚರ್, ಬ್ಲೀಕ್, that is not fresh. A fictional moorland that functions almost as a character in its own right. You can see Egdon Heath as a character in the novel itself. It explores complex human emotions, desire, disappointment, fate, and existential longing, with Egdon Heath symbolizing the indifferent universe against which human aspirations are set. Here, Eustacia White, the protagonist of the novel, desires for escape the bleak or brooding nature of Egdon Heath, but she has to die there. She has to live there. That is what happened to her life. Tragically ended. Disappointment. She wants to go away from the Egdon Heath, but she married Clym Eobright, and she had to live there. Her fate made her to live there itself. and existential longing. She wants to enjoy her life. She wants to free herself. She wants to free herself from these social constraints. So here Egdon Heath is playing a major role in the novel. So against the human desires, aspirations, all the characters want to become something else and they became something else. That is what you can see in the novel. So you can see the major theme, fatalism, the conflict between passion and social conventions, that is I have discussed here. Passion, she wants to go away from the Egdon Heath. She wants to live a leisurely life, luxurious life. That is what her passion. But social conventions, constraints pulled her back to live in the Egdon Heath. She had to follow her husband. And other than that, the tragedy of human misunderstandings. Mrs. Yeobright misunderstood about Eustacia White. Eustacia White misunderstood about Clem Yeobright, like that. So many conflicts regarding misunderstandings. Because of that misunderstanding, the novel takes a different turn, are intricately woven through the novel. You can see so many intricacies like that. The novel divided into 6 books. So in the first part you can see only 5 books, but after demanding from the audience, Thomas Hardy has wrote one more part of this book. 6 books ಅಂತ ಹೇಳಿದ್ರೆ separate 6 books ಅಂತ ಅಲ್ಲ. The novel itself has divided into 6 books, and sixth book has a different conclusion, climax. Sixth book added later with a different climax. So let me introduce the characters, important characters only I'm going to introduce. Clem Bright. So, one of the protagonists, he is the native, Return of the Native. So, he is the native from the title. The native of the title, Klim is an intelligent and idealistic man who returns to Egdon Heath from Paris, where he worked as a diamond merchant. There he was working as a diamond merchant and he disillusioned about the city life and he returned to his native place, that is Egdon Heath. Thomas Hardy about Clem Bright, like he was one in whom the dreamy and the practical met in a strange harmony. So he wants a practical life and Eustacia wants to live a dreamy life. Eustacia Wife, another important character, our protagonist, a beautiful and passionate and restless young woman who lives with her grandfather on the heath. She longs for a more glamorous and meaningful life, feeling imprisoned by Egdon Heath, that brooding nature of the Egdon Heath. Everyone treats her like a witch. Everyone hates her beauty. That is what. That is why she despises Yagdan Heath. She wants to leave that place. Eustacia is proud, romantic, and tragic. She seeks escape first through Wildeve. He is the demon Wildeve, another important character. Then through Clem Bright. But she failed. That is what fatalism. That is what Hegden Heath done to her. She was one of the kind to whom life is a continual struggle against the circumstances of place and sex. Demon Wildeve, another important character, we can say a villain in this novel. A former engineer and innkeeper, Wildeve is moody, egoistical, and indecisive. Means he is confusing about his decisions. He is romantically involved with both Eustacia and Thomasin. Thomasin Eobright, Clem Eobright's cousin, at different points. First, he was in love with Eustacia. Why? Then she fell in love with Thomasin, but he was not at all attractive towards Thomasin. But still, he was in love with Eustacia. That is what is indecisive nature. At different points, unable to commit sincerely to either. ಲೈಕ್ ಎರಡು ದೋಣಿ ಮೇಲೆ ಕಾಲಿಟ್ಟಿರೋ ರೀತಿ. ಒಂದು ಕಡೆ ನನಗೇನೋ ಸಿಗ್ತಾ ಇದೆ ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಆ ಕಡೆ ಹೋಗೋಣ ಅನ್ಸುತ್ತೆ, ಇನ್ನೊಂದ್ ಕಡೆ ನಂಗೇನೋ ಸಿಗ್ತಾ ಇದೆ ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಆ ಕಡೆ ಹೋಗೋಣ ಅನ್ಸುತ್ತೆ. ಲೈಕ್ ದಟ್ ಹಿ ವಾಸ್. He ultimately marries Thomasin but remains obsessed with Eustacia and her beauty. Thomas Hardy says about Damon Wildeve, like a man changed lovers as easily as he changed his shoes. You have to remember these quotations. Next character is Thomasin Yeobright. Her character is already introduced in Demon Wildeve. Klim's cousin, Klim Yeobright's cousin, and Mrs. Yeobright's niece. Mrs. Yeobright is Klim's mother. Thomasin is gentle, modest, and patient. She is very silent and like she is not a rebellious woman. She is not passionate. She is not proud like Eustacia. Here, Thomas Hardy contrasts her character to Eustacia Y. They are deadly opposed characters, opposing characters. It doesn't mean they are opposing each other, but their characteristics are contrast. Despite his despite his flaws means demon heals. She marries Wildeve and remains dutiful, eventually finding true affection with Diggory Wen. Let me introduce Diggory Wen later. Mrs. Yeobright, a proud, dignified widow and Klim's mother. She disapproves of Klim's relationship with Eustacia and Thomasin's marriage to Wildeve in the beginning. She disapproves Klim's marriage with Eustacia and Thomasin's marriage with Wildeve. Her estranglement from her son and daughter-in-law, Eustacia, daughter-in-law, contributes to the tragic chain of events. The death of Mrs. Yeobright gives a different turn to this novel. That is where misunderstanding plays a major role. Diggory Wen, a riddle man, means a seller of red dye used by shepherds. I think you know that. ಕುರಿಗಳು ಎಲ್ಲಾದ್ರೂ ಇರ್ಬೇಕಾದ್ರೆ ಗುಂಪಲ್ಲಿ ಇರ್ಬೇಕಾದ್ರೆ ಮಿಸ್ ಆಗ್ಬಾರ್ದು ಅಂತ ನೀಲಿ ಬಣ್ಣ ಕೆಂಪು ಬಣ್ಣ ಅದಕ್ಕೆ ಹಾಕಿರ್ತಾರಲ್ವಾ, ದಟ್ ಈಸ್ ವಾಟ್. Diggory is marked by his unusual red stained appearance and a lonely lifestyle. Because of that red color dye, he becomes a red man. So Thomas Hardy says about Diggory Wen, like the riddle man was not altogether a common product of civilization. He was a man of odd habits, the result of his occupation. So he himself is appearing as a red man, red color, with red color, because of his profession, because of his occupation. Captain Y, so he is not that major character. Eustacia's grandfather, a retired naval officer, with whom Eustacia Y is living. Egdon Heath means the place, functions almost like a character, an enduring presence shaping the destiny of everyone who lives on it. If you read the novel, you can feel that. Only through the summary you can feel the presence of Egdon Heath. Through the uh, original novel, only you can feel it. So let us go through the novel part by part. First book, titled as The Three Women. So who are the three women here? One is Thomasin, another is Mrs. Yeobright, and one more important character is Eustacia Y. These three, the three women. The novel begins as it was at present a place perfectly accordant with man's nature, neither ghastly hateful nor ugly, neither commonplace, unmeaning, nor tame, but like man, slighted and enduring. It was untouched by civilization. Means, for years, it is not at all changed even a bit. That is what Thomas Hardy is saying here. Though human being is changing, to against human being, the place remains the same. The novel opens with a vivid symbolic description of Egdon Heath. The novel is set in the remote and brooding landscape of Egdon Heath, a timeless, unchanging moorland. Still, it has the ancient touch of nature, culture, everything on this eerie, quiet night. So, the novel begins in a night. A wagon travels across the heath. A ಜಟಕ ಗಾಡಿ ಒಂದು. It belongs to Diggoryven, the Riddle Man, so called because his skin and clothes are dyed red from the pigment he sells to shepherds. That is how the novel begins. Diggoryven is carrying someone in that wagon. Who is that? We learn that Diggoryven is transporting a young woman, Thomasin Eo Bride. Why? At that night, why he is carrying Thomasin Eo Bride, who is in emotional distress. She was broken. She was crying throughout her journey. She had traveled to Anglebury to marry Damon Wildheave. So, this shows that Thomasin Bright fell in love with Damon Wildheave already and they tried to marry. But the wedding did not take place due to an error with the license. What was that error? Mrs. Bright didn't give permission. The failed ceremony is not a mere misunderstanding, it becomes a social scandal, especially since Thomasin had left in anticipation of marriage and now returns unmarried. Why Mrs. Yeo Bright's permission is so important here? Because she is the ward of Thomasin. She has inherited some money. If she agrees to that marriage, she is supposed to give that money to Thomasin. But Mrs. Yeobright doesn't believe in Damon Wilddew. That is why she disagrees her cousin's marriage with Damon Wilddew. According to that, she is not supposed to inherit that money. So this is not only a misunderstanding of failed ceremony. Because of failed ceremony, failed marriage, she carries social scandal. So people start to talk about her. So she thinks about her future now. Diggoryven is in love with Thomasin and offers to marry her, but she declines also. He appears in red color. He is working a mere work, earns very less. But Damon Wilddew is very handsome and passionate man. Whoever falls in love with Damon Wilddew. She doesn't want to leave Damon Wildview for Diggoryven. Anyways, Diggoryven is very uh, common and very simple man. The story then introduces the Eustacia wife. So, in the beginning of the novel, we introduced to the like a dark and brooding night in Egdon Heath and the distressing situation of Thomasin and Diggory's love for her and his protection for Thomasin. In this background, Eustatia's wife's character is introduced. A passionate and beautiful woman who is living with her grandfather, Captain White. She despises the heath and dreams of escape to a more exciting life out of the heath. She has a secret affair with Wild Eve. Before Damon Wildeve gets into marriage affair with Thomasin, he was in love with Eustacia Vai. What happened? But loses him when he decides to marry Thomasin because of her inheritance. Hears of the return of Clem Bright, Thomasin's cousin, and a successful diamond merchant from Paris. She schemes to attract him, hoping he will be her way out. So she decides to escape from the Hegden Heath through Clem Bright. Not because he is very handsome, she fell in love with Clem Bright. Because she wants to go, she wants to live in Paris. Hardy says, Eustacia Vai was the raw material of a divinity. On Olympus, she would have done well with a little preparation. Why he says this? You can see that. Pride returns to his native. She wants to meet him. At the same time, Mrs. Yeo Bright is arranging a function, a party to invite her son. At that party, a drama company means a little team is going to present a Christian, what to say, a scene, a kind of drama. She utilized this, what to say, drama as a means to meet him. That is why the writer says she can act without preparation. She has taken part in that drama and introduced herself to Clem Eobright. Clem Eobright, Thomasin's cousin and Mrs. Eobright's son, returns from Paris, where he worked as a diamond merchant. In one of the NET question papers, this question is asked: Clem Eobright's profession. His mother hopes he will marry Thomasin, but Klim has returned, disillusioned with the city life, and hopes to start a school to educate the rural poor on Egdon Heath. See, Egdon Heath is posing differently to both the characters. Eustacia Y hates the place and Clem Bright likes and loves the place. That is where Egdon Heath plays a major role. Eustacia, as she planned, meets him and they quickly develop an intense romantic relationship. At the same time, Wild Eve, seeing Eustacia lost to him, marries Thomasin. Anyways, Eustacia is in love with Clemio Bright. Let me marry Thomasin. That is how Damon Wilddew decided and he approached Thomasin once again. Anyways, Thomasin decided to marry him apart from her inheritance. Mrs. Eobright disapproves of Klim's growing attachment to Eustacia and is disturbed by his renunciation of his career in Paris. The whole Egdon Heath hates Eustacia as a witch, her beauty. There is a bias about her character, about her appearance. So that influenced Mrs. Yeobright. So she also hates her naturally. About Clem Yeobright, Thomas Hardy says he was not a man who made a great fuss about life. He took it quietly. He is not like Eustacia. Unlikely he receives the life as it is. But Eustacia wants to live above the life, whatever she lives now. Next, third, the book second is the arrival of Klim Eobright. Then the book third, the fascination. When Mrs. Eobright discovers that Klim and Eustacia are engaged, means they are committed to marry, she opposes it. Anyways, Klim and Eustacia marry despite opposition from Mrs. Eobright. When she dislikes Eustacia, she rejects to give her assent to this marriage. At the moment itself, Klim Eobright leaves his house for Eustacia. He comes out of his mother's house, and there itself he decides to marry Eustacia and rent a hut on Egdon Heath. There he starts to live with Eustacia. He finds a cottage to rent so that he can have some place to live even before they marry. And from his mother's house to that cottage. There, Eustatia's dreams broken starts to break. That is where Egdon Heath plays a major role. Next important part, the closed door, fourth book. Klim becomes ill from studying too hard because he wants to become a schoolmaster there. He resumes his studies because of his overstudy. He lost his eyesight temporarily. He is temporarily blinded, financially struggling because he is not earning so much. He begins working as a fuzz cutter. ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಬೇಲಿ ಎಲ್ಲ ಕಟ್ ಮಾಡಿ ಒಂದು ಸರಿ ಮಾಡುವಂತಹ ಕೆಲಸ. Which horrifies Eustacia because she was dreaming to escape from Higdon Heath and she wants to live a happy life away from Higdon Heath. But fate makes her to live here. Fate makes her to marry Clemio Bright. Now he is blind and he is not earning so much. She has to live here. Social constraints made her to live with her husband. Klim becomes ill from studying too hard and is temporarily blinded. Sorry, this is repeated. She means Eustacia. Imagined life with Klim would be her route out of Egdon. Now feels trapped. She can't escape anymore. Again, she falls for wild Eve. Now she has found the way out through Damon Wildeve. Now she comes to know that Damon Wildeve inherits some money because at the same time Mrs. E.O. Bright comes to term with Thomasin. She has given her inheritance like almost 11,000 pounds or something to Thomasin. She handed it to Thomasin and Thomasin handed it to her husband. Now, Damon Wildeve inheritance some money. He can go anywhere he wants. He has money. This news changes Eustatia's mind, even Damon Wildew's mind. Mrs. Yeobright, feeling estranged from both her son and niece, niece means Tumasin, decides to visit them, decides to reconcile with both of them. On the fateful day, here the fate turns everything down. Both Clem and Eustacia, unaware of her arrival, fail to open the door for her. Mrs. Yeobright wants to see her uh, son. She reached his cottage. ಮಗನ್ನ ನೋಡ್ಬೇಕು ಅಂತ ಅವನ ಮನೆ ಹತ್ರಕ್ಕೆ ಬರ್ತಾಳೆ. ಆದರೆ ಏನಾಗತ್ತೆ, ಕ್ಲಿಮ್ ಯೋಬ್ರೈಟ್ ವಾಸ್ ಇನ್ ಸ್ಲೀಪ್, ಮಲ್ಕೋಬಿಟ್ಟಿರ್ತಾನೆ. ಅದೇ ಸಂದರ್ಭಕ್ಕೆ ಯೂಸ್ಟೇಷಿಯಾ ವೈ ವಾಸ್ ಟಾಕಿಂಗ್ ಟು ಡೇಮನ್ ವೈಲ್ಡ್ ಡೀವ್ ಇನ್ ಸೀಕ್ರೆಟ್. ಶಿ ವಾಸ್ ಶೇರಿಂಗ್ ಆಲ್ ಹರ್ ಡೆಸ್ಪೈರ್. ನನ್ನ ಲೈಫ್ ಹೀಗಾಗೋಯ್ತು, ನಾನು ಹಾಗೆ ಅನ್ಕೊಂಡಿದ್ದೆ, ಹೀಗೆ ಅನ್ಕೊಂಡಿದ್ದೆ ಅಂತ ಅವಳ ದುಃಖ ಎಲ್ಲವನ್ನ ಡೇಮನ್ ವೈಲ್ಡ್ ಡೀವ್ ಹತ್ರ ಹಂಚ್ಕೋತಾ ಇರ್ತಾಳೆ. ಅದೇ ಸಮಯಕ್ಕೆ ಮಿಸ್ಸಸ್ ಯೋ ಬ್ರೈಟ್ ಮನೆ ಹತ್ರ ಬರ್ತಾಳೆ. ಬಂದು ಬಾಗಿಲನ್ನ ನಾಕ್ ಮಾಡ್ತಾಳೆ. ಆದರೆ ಈಗ ಬಾಗಿಲು ತೆಗೆದ್ರೆ ಡೇಮನ್ ವೈಲ್ಡ್ ಡೀವ್ ಮನೇಲಿರೋದು ಅವಳಿಗೆ ಗೊತ್ತಾಗ್ಬಿಡತ್ತೆ ಅಂತ ಯುಸ್ತೇಷಿಯಾ ಮನೆಯ ಬಾಗಿಲನ್ನ ತೆಗಿಯಲ್ಲ. ಅಂಡ್ ಶಿ ಅಸ್ಯೂಮ್ಸ್ ದಟ್ ಮೇ ಬಿ ಕ್ಲಿಮ್ ಟಾಕ್ಸ್ ಟು ಹಿಸ್ ಮದರ್, ಮೇ ಬಿ ಹಿ ಆನ್ಸರ್ಸ್ ಹರ್ ಕಾಲ್ ಅಂತ ಅವಳು ಅವಾಯ್ಡ್ ಮಾಡ್ತಾಳೆ. ಸೊ ದೇರ್ ಫೇಟ್ ಟರ್ನ್ಸ್ ಎವ್ರಿಥಿಂಗ್ ಡೌನ್. Clem is asleep and Eustacia believes he will answer. On the other hand, she was talking to Wildlive in secret. Mrs. Yeobright saw Eustacia was talking to some other man, and she misunderstood that even though Eustacia knows that I am here, she is declining my entry or my reconciliation with my son. Like that, she thinks. ಬೇಕಂತಲೇ ನನ್ನ ಮಗನ್ನ ನನ್ನ ಜೊತೆ ಮಾತಾಡಕ್ಕೆ ಬಿಡ್ತಾ ಇಲ್ಲ, ಬೇಕಂತಲೇ ಇವಳು ಮನೆ ಬಾಗ್ಲನ್ನ ತೆಗ್ಸ್ಕೊಡ್ತಾ ಇಲ್ಲ ಅಂತ ಅವಳು ಥಿಂಕ್ ಮಾಡಿ ಅಲ್ಲಿಂದ ಹೊರಟೋಗ್ತಾಳೆ. ಹಾರ್ಟ್ ಬ್ರೋಕನ್ ಮಿಸಸ್ ಯೋಬ್ರೈಟ್ ಕೊಲ್ಯಾಪ್ಸಸ್ ಆನ್ ದ ಹೀದ್ on her way back to home and later dies of snake bite. After Mrs. Yeobright dies, Johnny Nonsuch, ಮಿಸಸ್ ಯೋಬ್ರೈಟ್ ಮನೆಗೆ ಹೋಗ್ಬೇಕಾದ್ರೆ ಜಾನಿ ನನ್ಸಚ್ಚ ಇನ್ನೂ ಒಂದು ಕ್ಯಾರೆಕ್ಟರ್ ಬರುತ್ತೆ, ಮೈನರ್ ಕ್ಯಾರೆಕ್ಟರ್, ಒಂದು ಹುಡುಗ. ಸೊ ಅವನೇನ್ ಮಾಡ್ತಾನೆ, ಸ್ವಲ್ಪ ದೂರ ಮಿಸಸ್ ಯೋಬ್ರೈಟ್ ಜೊತೆ ಬರ್ತಾನೆ. ಆ ಸಂದರ್ಭದಲ್ಲಿ ಮಿಸಸ್ ಯೋಬ್ರೈಟ್ ಎಕ್ಸ್ಪ್ರೆಸಸ್ ಆಲ್ ಹರ್ ಡೆಸ್ಪೈರ್. ಶಿ ಎಕ್ಸ್ಪ್ರೆಸ್ಡ್ an expression, the same expression Nonsuch shared with Clem Yeobright, which turns the story to different way. Nonsuch repeats the remark about Clem that his mother made earlier in the child's presence. Next, fifth book. According to the first publication, this is the final chapter. Fifth book, The Discovery. Clem blames himself and Eustacia for his mother's death. Now he comes to know that Eustacia didn't open the door. He also misunderstood about his wife. Their relationship begins to crumble. Eustacia feels more isolated, even more isolated, because she is already suffering, she is already struggling. Now she lost her husband's love too. She leaves Clem and comes to her grandfather's house without thinking anything else. She had tried to be a heroine and failed. She had tried to be a martyr and failed. She had tried to be a wife and failed. The fate plays with her differently. Now living at his mother's house, Klim waits. After everything happens, Eustacia returns to her grandfather's house. Clemio bride comes to her mother's house. Now living at his mother's house, Klim waits, expecting to hear from Eustacia. He has written a letter to Eustacia, which reached, and Eustatia's grandfather was about to give that letter to Eustacia, but he thinks that letter reached him at night. He thinks that Eustacia was sleeping and he didn't give that letter to Eustacia. Already, Eustacia has planned to escape from Egdon Heath with Damon Wildave. Her grandfather didn't know that. Thomasin advises him to contact Eustacia. When he gets home, he writes her a letter inviting her to return. ಅವನ್ ಬರ್ದಿರುವಂತ ಲೆಟರ್ ಯೂಸ್ತೇಷಿಯಾನ ತಲುಪಲ್ಲ. ಯೂಸ್ತೇಷಿಯಾ ಅದಕ್ಕೂ ಮೊದಲೇ ಅಲ್ಲಿಂದ ಓಡೋಗುವಂತ ಪ್ಲಾನ್ ಮಾಡಿರ್ತಾಳೆ. ಅವಳ ತಾತ ಇನ್ನೇನೋ ಲೆಟರ್ ಕೊಡ್ಬೇಕು ಅಂತ ಹೋದಾಗ ಆಲ್ರೆಡಿ ಯೂಸ್ತೇಷಿಯಾ ಮನೆಯನ್ನ ಬಿಟ್ಟು ಹೊರಟೋಗಿರ್ತಾಳೆ. ದಟ್ ವಾಸ್ ಅ ಡಾರ್ಕ್ ಅಂಡ್ ರೈನಿ ನೈಟ್. ಇಟ್ ವಾಸ್ ರೈನಿಂಗ್ ಹೆವಿಲಿ. Eustacia signals Wildeve to leave as they planned before. Though it is raining, Eustacia determines to go ahead with her plans. She wants to go against the fate, but fate doesn't let her go away from the Egdon Heath. Hardy says of Eustacia, never was harmony more perfect than that between the chaos of her mind and the chaos of the world without. Damon Wildave waits below the inn for Eustacia, and at the same time, Klim approaches looking for his wife. Already, Klim comes to know that she is out of his house. Both men, sure, it is Eustacia who has fallen in or jumped into a stream. I have missed here stream. ಅವರಿಬ್ರು ಅಲ್ಲಿ ನಿಂತಿರ್ಬೇಕಾದ್ರೆ somebody has jumped into river or a stream. They heard it. They can't see that because it is very dark night and raining heavily. They rush to aid. Here comes another coincidence. Diggory now approaching with Thomasin. Diggory Thomasin ಅನ್ನ ಕರ್ಕೊಂಡು ಬರ್ತಾ ಇರ್ತಾನೆ because Thomasin wants to see what happened to Eustacia. Seeing what's happened to Eustacia. Diggory sends Thomasin to the inn because it was raining heavily, then dives into the river. Diggory retrieves Eustacia's and Damon Wildave's body because already they're dead, but only Klim survives. Fate played with both of them, all the three characters. So this was the first conclusion. Sixth book is added, named After Courses. Hardy originally intended the novel to end with Eustacia's death, but due to pressures for a more reconciliatory conclusion, he added a sixth book. In this final part, Klim Yeobright becomes an itinerant preacher, as he dreamt of. Thomasin receives a substantial inheritance after Damon Wildave's death and then moves in with Klim by choice. Thomasin, now a widow, eventually marries Diggory who has left his life as a riddle man and become a dairy farmer. ಸೊ ಅವನು ರೆಡಲ್ ಮ್ಯಾನ್ ಆಗಿದಾಗ ಫುಲ್ ರೆಡ್ ಆಗಿ ಅವ್ನು ಚೆನ್ನಾಗಿ ಕಾಣಿಸ್ತಾ ಇರಲ್ಲ. ಆ ಪ್ರೊಫೆಷನ್ ಅನ್ನ ಬಿಟ್ಟು ಡೈರಿ ಫಾರ್ಮರ್ ಆದ್ಮೇಲೆ ಅವನ ನಿಜವಾದ ಬಣ್ಣ ಹೊರಗಡೆ ಬರುತ್ತೆ, ಅವನ ನಿಜವಾದ ವ್ಯಕ್ತಿತ್ವ ಎಲ್ಲ ಹೊರಗಡೆ ಬರುತ್ತೆ. ಸೊ ಶಿ ಸ್ಟಾರ್ಟೆಡ್ ಟು ಲೈಕ್ ಹಿಮ್. ಫೈನಲಿ ಶಿ ಮ್ಯಾರಿಡ್ ಹಿಮ್. The story closes with a sense of calm and restoration for the surviving characters. This is the end of the novel. Thank you very much for watching the video. Liked my class, whoever liked the content, please do like the video and share the video with your friends. My dear friends, if you not yet subscribed to the channel, do subscribe now itself, because I'm going to give you more interesting and important stories. Thank you for watching the video. Tune to the channel for more information about literature.